Ever get the feeling, like some stories in the Bible, they're like onions.
Onion.
Yeah, like layers upon layers. And just when you think, okay, I've got this figured out, bam, something makes you rethink the whole thing.
Okay, I see what you mean.
And that's totally the vibe I'm getting from this deep dive we're doing, prepping for our chat about the Rich Man and Lazarus.
Intriguing analogy, and you're right, this parable from Luke, it's anything but straightforward. I mean, people have been debating its meaning for centuries.
Exactly. You've got this wealthy guy living it up, totally ignoring Lazarus' suffering right there at his doorstep. Then
Yes.
boom, afterlife switcheroo.
Seems simple on the surface, right? Like a lesson about wealth versus poverty, good versus bad.
Right.
But I gotta admit, the more I dug into the sources you sent, the more I realized how much I'd glossed over. Like, I thought I knew this story.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that surface level, especially with the story as well known as this one. But the real gold, like with any good parable, it's hidden beneath the surface. So let's talk layers. First off, this story, it's only in Luke. What's the deal with that? Does it mean, like, the other gospel writers just didn't think it was important enough to include?
Not necessarily. You see, each gospel writer had their own focus, their own audience they were writing for. Luke was known for his meticulous research, and he put a huge emphasis on social justice.
Oh, right.
Which, of course, is incredibly relevant to this parable. He really wanted to highlight that stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots in first century Israel.
Okay, so Luke, the social justice advocate, gives us this parable about a heartless rich guy and a suffering but righteous beggar. But then he throws this curveball with the whole afterlife portrayal, right? It's like a mashup of ancient Jewish and Greek ideas that doesn't quite fit the heaven or hell binary we often hear about.
You're hitting on something really important there. This is where the story takes us from familiar territory into some deeper, more complex theological waters.
Okay.
To really unpack this, we need to understand how ancient people viewed the afterlife.
All right, so hit us with some ancient history. Was it really all fire and brimstone back then? Like, what did they believe?
Well, not quite. To start, think of the Hebrew concept of Sheol. Now, Sheol wasn't seen as this final destination like heaven or hell. It was more like, how do I put it?
Like purgatory or something.
Not exactly. Think of it more like, I don't know, a cosmic waiting room. Everyone went there after death, righteous or not.
Okay, a celestial waiting area. Interesting. So where does Hades fit into all of this? Is that just the Greek version of this waiting room?
Essentially, yes. You see, when the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek, what we call the Septuagint, they used Hades as the equivalent for the Hebrew Sheol.
Makes sense.
But here's where Luke gets really interesting. He describes Hades, this waiting room, as having two distinct sides.
Two sides.
One side with torment, where the rich man ends up, and another side that's a place of comfort and peace, where Lazarus finds himself.
So not just a neutral waiting room then. This is sounding a lot like heaven and hell, but like right next door to each other.
It's tempting to draw those parallels, I get that. But here's the thing. The concept of hell, as we usually think of it, like the final ultimate judgment.
Right.
That's actually distinct from this whole Sheol Hades thing. It's not the same.
Okay, so we've got these three different afterlife ideas all swirling around here. I'll admit, it's making my head spin a little bit. So help me connect the dots.
Okay. Imagine it like this. Sheol, or Hades, it's like the departure lounge at a cosmic airport.
A cosmic airport. I like that.
Right. It's where everyone goes after death. And there might be, different areas within that lounge. Some areas nicer than others, for sure.
That's it.
But it's not the final destination. Hell, on the other hand, that's a completely different terminal altogether. And it's reserved for those, those who are facing that final judgment.
All right, that actually makes it a lot clearer.
Yeah.
But back to the parable. Why does Luke even depict Hades this way? I mean, it's kind of a head-scratcher.
It really is. And it's actually right here where some scholars think Jesus might be drawing on, existing Jewish folktales, those sorts of stories, to make his point.
Like those stories we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
With the surprise afterlife reversals. Are you saying Jesus was, riffing on pop culture to teach a deeper lesson?
It's not as out there as it might sound. I mean, rabbis in Jesus's time, they often used those familiar stories, familiar imagery to really connect with the people they were talking to.
Sure.
And these folk tales, while they often had these themes of, justice and judgment in the afterlife, it was like a powerful framework that Jesus could then use to, really challenge the assumptions of his listeners, make them think.
Okay, so maybe not a literal depiction of the afterlife, but like a strategic use of storytelling to drive home a bigger point, which brings us back to that that initial question. Is the message here really as simple as be poor, go to heaven, be rich, go to hell?
Oh man, if only it were that simple. The Bible is incredibly clear that our salvation, it hinges on our faith in Jesus, not on our bank accounts. This parable isn't about earning your way into heaven by being poor.
Right, because if that were the case, every lottery winner out there should be really worried, huh?
Exactly. That's not the message at all. This parable it's more like, I don't know, a magnifying glass or something.
Okay.
It's amplifying the dangers of prioritizing, wealth over people, something that, we see Luke emphasizing constantly throughout his gospel.
So less about poverty gets you a free pass to heaven and more about how's your heart doing in regards to, like, wealth and compassion.
Now you're getting it. It's all about aligning our own hearts with God's heart. It's about justice. And it's interesting to notice how in this parable, Luke actually gives Lazarus a name.
Yeah, that's true.
That's actually pretty unusual because in most parables, the characters, they're nameless.
Yeah, like the Good Samaritan or the prodigal son. We get the archetype, right? Not a name tag. But Lazarus is different.
And that difference is really crucial. You see, the name Lazarus, it's a form of the Hebrew name Eleazar. And Eleazar means God helps.
Wow.
So this suggests that Lazarus represents more than just like any poor person, He embodies all those who depend on God, those who are so often, overlooked and marginalized by society, the forgotten ones.
So by giving him a name, Luke is making us really see Lazarus. Right. Not just his poverty.
Exactly. And that's powerful. It's this powerful reminder that how we treat those who are most vulnerable, those in need, it's a direct reflection of our relationship with God.
So it's less about Lazarus's material poverty and more about recognizing the Lazarus in our own time and place, right? The people that our culture just kind of ignores or pushes to the side.
That's a really powerful way to put it. And I think that's really what this parable is challenging us to do,
Yeah.
to ask ourselves, who are the Lazaruses in my life? Who are the ones that, maybe I'm overlooking or just, I don't know, failing to really see?
And it's not even just about seeing them, is it? It's about how we respond once we see the need. I mean, look at the rich man in the story. He sees Lazarus every single day right there at his gate. But does it change his actions? Not one bit.
You got it. It's not enough to just acknowledge that there are needs around us. This parable is a call to action, to love, to, demonstrate God's compassion, but not just with words, with our actions, with our lives.
It makes me think about all those times I've been so caught up in, my own little bubble, my to-do list, my own comfort, whatever, that I've totally missed opportunities to show kindness or, to be generous. We can be so spiritually nearsighted sometimes, even when we think we're doing okay.
Oh, I think that's a struggle for all of us, don't you? And it's exactly why this parable is so relevant. Even now, it's not just a story for the ultra rich. It's a wake-up call for all of us, no matter our income level. It's about, really examining our hearts and seeing if our priorities, what we're chasing after, if they line up with God's heart for justice, for compassion, for people.
So where do we even go from here? How do we take this ancient parable, this story,
and
actually let it shape our lives today?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And honestly, I think it starts small. It starts with just cultivating this posture of openness to the needs around us. Maybe us reaching out to someone who's lonely, or volunteering at a local charity, or even just being more aware of how we're using our resources, our time, our money. The key is to allow this parable, the story of the rich man and Lazarus, to disrupt our complacency, to shake us up a bit, and to inspire us to really love our neighbors. But in those tangible, real, life-changing ways.
It's like this parable, it doesn't just give us a glimpse into the afterlife. It's like it throws open the doors to a whole new way of living right here, right now.
Beautifully said. It's a call to radical generosity, to compassionate living, and ultimately to a deeper, more authentic relationship with God, Andy, with the people around us.
Wow. This whole deep dive has given me so much to think about. Thank you seriously for taking us on this journey through all the layers of this incredible parable.
The pleasure was all mine, truly. It's been a great conversation.
And to everyone listening, hey, if this conversation sparks something in you, don't let that be the end of it. Keep exploring these ideas. Keep asking the tough questions. Keep diving deep into those truths that resonate in your heart. Until next time, keep seeking.